of ideas.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Debatey McDebateFace. Today we've got three galactic titans of the left locked in an endless blood sport. In one corner, we've got Toni Gram, otherwise known as Big Brain Ideas. In the other corner, we've got Sam Dealey, otherwise known as Woohooligan Comedy. And standing somewhere in between them is Justin Gibson, otherwise known as SJW Debates or Jangles ScienceLad. Today, these titans will spill each other's blood over some of the hottest topics. All right, so let's go ahead and start with this central theme question: comedy as a reflection of morality. So, which one of you wants to take the first swing?
I'll take the first swing. This is my area of expertise. Hello, everyone. My name is Justin. I have a small YouTube channel called Jangles ScienceLad. You can go check out. You can also follow me on Twitter at SJW Debates. I go by use he, him pronouns, and I eat discourse for breakfast. I've done so many debates on my channel. These people are not prepared. The level of nuance and thoughtful for critique that these poor souls are about to experience are not for the faint of heart. There will be blood. There will be tears. There will be friendly and polite conversation until only one remains. I wanted to talk about comedy and morality and rhetoric and wherever the conversation leads us. So that's me, and I'll let someone else take it before we actually get into the conversation.
I want to go last. So.
You better be ready, because I'm going to rip off your head and shit down your neck with facts and logic and dick jokes.
Gracious.
Was that it?
Yeah, I'm Sam, Woohooligan. On my YouTube channel and my webcomic, I make dick jokes for justice. So that's me.
I'm gonna be the moderate one out of the two. I'm gonna be the the one who's for love, who uses love and solidarity as their weapon.
Oh, we found our Marianne Williamson.
I'm Toni Gram, and I'm the creator of the channel BigBreadBrainz, and yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So I guess we all ready to talk now? Ready to destroy each other?
To destroy. With facts and logic.
Eviscerate, decapitate.
Yes, eviscerate and decapitate.
So, are you guys more of the Ben Burgess side, like you're for facts and logic, or are you more of the Chapo side, where you're against facts and logic?
Well, I run a science-based channel, so I love my research. I love my statistics. I love my APA-style citations. So, yeah, I really, actually, unironically do love facts and logics. So, I guess I would be on that side.
I'm in favor of facts and logic. I just am sort of dubious about the limitations. Like we have all this science that shows that like people don't respond to science. Like that, like when you give people like actual like real facts, like their response is like, no, you. Like, so.
That is true.
What about you, Tony?
Well, I mean, kind of like the Chapo thing. Like they have a book, their book, Chapo's Guide to Revolution, against facts and logic or whatever. I think like that's like pretty ironic. So it's more of like a joke, I guess, because obviously they're not against like basic facts and logic, I guess. But like it was more of like a play of like how it's kind of the ethos around that idea and how that's kind of evolved politically, and how it's kind of used. It can be used in like negative ways, like the Ben Shapiro types or whatever. So I think that was more of the play on it. And like in Ben Burgess's book, if you guys have read his new book, Give Them an Argument, it's like he kind of opens with like, it's kind of like the anti-Oedipus, like to Chapo's book. It was kind of like it's kind of like a like Chapo's book, not like anti, but the idea is like, he like opens it with like, oh yeah, Chapo's book, and they talk about they're against logic or whatever. But it's like, obviously I agree with Ben Burgess. Like I think that we need, facts and logic if we want to do anything effective. And I don't think Chapo is against that. I just think that was more that title is more ironic, I feel.
Oh yeah,
like they're not actually against it.
I think that segues really well into what I was wanting to talk about broadly here. So I'm of the opinion that comedy is rhetoric based broadly on that. So they were using humor to make a point. They were trying to make jokes, dick jokes for justice, if you will, in order to make you more accepting of their point of view and actually make you more open to their, ironically enough, facts and logic. If they come at you with this, we're not taking ourselves that seriously, wink, wink kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So I've done some really cool scientific, I haven't done the research, but I've read really cool scientific research that says that when people look at humorous images, which I'm just going to go ahead and assume that they were using memes and they couldn't put memes in a scientific paper, the exact same parts of the brain light up as when you're hearing rhetoric. So if you're familiar with Aristotle's rhetorical triangle way back in like high school, there's ethos, pathos, and logos. So there's character, emotion, and logic that goes behind it. And there's character, emotion, and logic that goes into understanding intentional comedy. So someone has to trust who you are as a person. They have to kind of identify with you a little bit. That's why relating to your audience is so important. They have to be emotionally invested in the material. So that's why telling personal stories and making someone like connect with you on a personal level is so important. And there needs to be a logic behind the joke. You need to set up a norm that you then violate in a acceptable way. So there's a logical train of thought that goes through that. So humor can be a very, very good way of actually getting a broader point across when you're trying to talk to somebody rather than just being spouting facts and logic at them, I guess. So I see the area between overt, slapstick and, just straight up dry facts and logic as a spectrum that we can really, really marry and meet somewhere in the middle to have really effective rhetoric and get our points across very well.
Yeah, so like he was talking about Chapo Trap House's book, where they were saying the joke being that they were against logic. And it's interesting because like on the other side, like the Nazis are promoting promoting that same idea and saying it's a joke, but it's actually not a joke in their case, really. Or well, I mean it is, but like it has some very like real sinister intent. The clown world meme, the whole point of the clown world meme is to get people that oppose Nazis to stop opposing Nazis. We're like, yeah, I don't think so. But it's been at least somewhat effective. So, like we have to, at some point we have to meet them on those terms, right? Because like you can't just go to, people promoting the clown world meme and say like, well, but really no, like, you can't give them like a dry dissertation like Nazis created this and therefore blah, blah, blah. Like people are just going to blow you off. You have to meet them with like more comedy.
Yeah, I agree with that. So when I say comedy is a tool of rhetoric, that's a neutral way to describe it. It can be used for good, to push good ideas that are going to help people, and it can also use to be pushed Nazism. And I think we've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah.
And part of the reason that's so effective is it is kind of hard to attack comedy, because what's the number one defense if someone says something outlandish or out racist or outwardly bigoted, but in a humorous way? What's the response they always have? It's just a joke. It's just a meme, bro. Quit being offended by memes and things like that.
Sorry.
So it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to attach that, but there have been studies that ruining their fun might actually be a good way to combat that. So they've done studies on benign violation theory, which is my preferred theory towards humor. And if you ground someone in their own morality prior or after hearing a joke, they might not like it, but it makes the joke less funny because you've kind of taken away a lot of the benignness of that violation. So you grounded their moral roots just a little bit more. And so knowing how to ruin jokes is one of the best benefits of studying humor theory.
So yeah, if I can hop in, or if you guys know about Richard Dawkins, and he has like this idea of like a meme, which is like it's like a measurable, like an abstract kind of measurable way of like an idea of cultural information. And it like works, like it's like the idea is that it works kind of like genes. It's like how it spreads or whatever by imitation. And
that sounds like you're describing the original definition of meme.
Yeah.
Like I know, like
Richard
when
Dawkins
people say meme nowadays, they tend to be talking more specifically about like lolcats or like some kind of graphical thing, but like that's not the origin of the term.
Well, you know that the origin of the term by Richard Dawkins, it's just a term that has multiple things fit into it. And if you look at the definition, then it's like, yeah, of course, a meme or like lolcats or whatever you said, like average, like contemporary memes, that would fit into the definition of what his definition of meme is. So it is the same thing.
Well, I mean, lolcats are
so what when you say lolcats, do you mean just like memes, or like what is that?
Lolcat is like specifically like the picture of a cat with the like I can has cheeseburger or some other kind of like misspelled or bad grammar.
That's a meme, right? That's a meme, right? It's like a piece of information.
It's a type of, like it's so
yeah,
like,
that fits the definition of Richard Dawkins meme.
But that's just one small slice of meme. Like that's one A is B, but B isn't necessarily A, right? Lolcats are a type of meme. There are lots of other kinds of memes as well. Like anything that like any like turn of phrase technically is a meme. Like
exactly.
That people say.
A piece of information, which is like everything, can be considered a piece of information.
Right. It's just something that people repeat.
Right.
So
like
I think
genes.
a good example, like what you're talking about, and you can expand on this in a second. So the NPC meme. People can just post a picture of that face with no text explaining what it is, and nothing. But if you've been on the internet long enough, if you're a part of that culture,
if you've been around and seen it.
Yeah, you know what that picture is supposed to represent and what they're trying to say about you with that picture. Is that pretty? Without them ever having to explain it, is that another definition of meme that you were talking about?
Me or
Tony?
Tony.
So, what was the question again?
So I was trying to figure an example of what you were talking about, and I brought up the NPC meme about how you have to share this culture, you have to share norms with the people that you're posting with in order to know what that picture is supposed to represent and how it applies to you. So it's like it's shared through culture, not just it's not a meme until it is shared across culture. That's what's a joke from a meme, right?
Well, it's like a separated joke from a meme. I don't know if they're mutually exclusive because like a joke could be passed around culturally. So like that could be also considered a meme, a joke and a meme. So yeah, I mean, so it's just like, I posted in the chat in the YouTube video, and here I'll just read it out. Meme, a unit, and that's why I said measurable, is because it says a unit of cultural information spread by imitation. The term meme, from the Greek mimina, meaning imitated, was introduced in 1976 by British evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins in his work The Selfish Gene.
Okay.
So that's just like a quick definition of like what I was talking about. And
was that from Wikipedia?
That was from Britannica.com. And also, there's like the Wikipedia right here.
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree that Richard Dawkins, talked about memes in The Selfish Gene, but I suspect that he picked it up from somewhere else. I remember hearing that it was older than Dawkins. But in any event.
Well, it's like this idea, of course, like that, like the kind of like abstract idea is like, is been around since humans have been around, been spreading information.
Yeah. It's just things people repeat.
Right. But he just kind of like he's the one who coined that term, I guess, and kind of, he was the first one to represent it that way. Just like, like people have been talking about, ideas of Marxism way before Marx, but he just framed it in his books in that way that it caught on culturally, and it had, it's just called Marxism. Right.
Like he's the one that popularized it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Justin, so you're saying basically that a meme works like an in-joke, right? If you have an in-joke with your friends and then you go somewhere else and you tell them, you tell the in-joke, people there that don't get it, it's not really a joke to them because they weren't in on it originally. And the same sort of thing with memes, that if you repeat a meme to someone and they don't understand the context in which the meme came about, they don't understand where it's from, they don't get it, it ceases really to be a meme for them, because they don't have the recognition of what it actually means.
Right. I think there's it's really hard to separate at what point does a joke become a signifier and becomes a meme? At what point, how large does a joke have to be before it's considered a meme, which is more cultural rather than just in group? I can get my husband to have in jokes that no one else are going to understand.
Right.
Are those really memes?
It's not considered a meme because, right. But then you're getting into the heap paradox, right? How many grains of sand do you need to form a heap? One or two grains of sand, obviously not a heap, but if you've got a handful, that's a heap.
At what point did it take out 1 grain at a time? Is there an exact line that makes it not a heap or a heap?
Yeah.
Yeah. You also see
how many people need to be involved?
How many people
to have it considered a meme, right?
Yeah.
So there's no strict definition to it.
Oh yeah, I think the general definition is that when you're sharing this meme, most of the people listening have to be able to share some sort of norm with you. They don't have to agree with you; they just have to share some sort of norm. So, for example, let's see how many people in the chat get this. So, have you ever seen a bunch of people below a Tim Pool tweet just say bottom text as a joke? All right, that makes absolutely no sense unless you're familiar with certain things, familiar with a certain video where he wasn't familiar with a separate meme, and people making fun of him for that. Now, how many people is that going to apply to? Do we call that a meme? Is it only a meme if you're in those circles that are in online political discourse, and things like that? So I think that's why memes have really taken online, because we can form these micro communities that are huge.
Oh yeah.
Here with a bunch of people, but still have enough in common to where signifiers can take the place of punchlines. Like someone can set something up. I have a signifier that's going to be a great punchline for that. Put in the meme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and knowyourmeme.com, purports to be an authority on what memes are, their definitions, when they started and how they spread, but there's all sorts of turns of phrase that are never going to show up. They're never going to cover the the expression "cart before the horse." That's a meme. It's not going to show up on Know Your Meme.
Maybe it should.
Well, why I brought up that book, The Selfish Gene, or by that Richard Dawkins. because I had like a whole point with that, but we kind of had to like solidify that first little part first, Rick Dawkins, and I feel like we kind of I feel like we kind of like solidified that. So it's like the rest. I was kind of applying that to the rest of the point, which was the fact of like how like understanding ideology culturally and kind of how certain things ideologically can spread, and like how and because we were talking about comedy at first, and it's like the idea of like, you know, a lot of people get into the real most of the time on the right. It's like way more known to be like a phenomenon on the right, that a lot of people get further and further down the pipeline from jokes, from comedy. You know what I'm saying? So it's like comedy has such a direct has such direct causalities and effects, you know, with politics. And that's really what that new Dave Chappelle stand up with those awful trans jokes, like that's it's like everything is political, you know. And it's like it's especially political. All the people talking about, oh, Dave Chappelle isn't political, so it's not, you know, it's not his fault. Da da da. Everything's political, especially when you have that big of a base that's like viewing your work. That's a lot of people that are going to potentially, you know, vote on certain issues that can really have a material effect. So it definitely has like a way more directly linked to politics than people think.
Oh, absolutely. I actually have a theory about how that links to politics and how it can push politics, if you guys want to hear it. Maybe this is where we can disagree and fight.
I totally agree that dick jokes are a gateway drug. And yes, continue.
All right, so I plan to talk for a while to explain this, but please, if at any point, please interrupt me. To get destroyed, of course. So the theory that I work off the most, that I found the most scientific backing for, is called benign violation theory, the benign violation theory of humor. And it states that in order for a joke to work, in order for someone to find it funny, that joke must violate a norm, one.
Yep.
It has to, that violation has to be perceived as benign, as in not going too far. And the third one, that they have to happen simultaneously. So you can't, like, you know, find it benign later or something like that. So violate a norm, find that violation, okay, and those two happen at the same time.
Minor nitpick before you continue. Exceptions to the rule that, like, slapstick, like the Three Stooges, you know, the whoopee cushion, like, they don't really fall into the same category of, and I don't think, like, I suspect that these sorts of jokes don't really activate the rhetorical portions of the brain that
yes,
but
we disagree
they do
on something. Yes. I'm so excited. We can fight. Oh, so there's a couple ways to make a joke benign. In the case of slapstick, you can create psychological distance between the violation and your own morality. So, for example, there's a Three Stooges joke where Moe takes a saw and rips it across Curly's head.
Right. Yeah.
All right, that would not be out of place in a horror movie. That's how people have died in horror movies. But because there's that sound effect, like. And afterwards, showing you that he's okay. Showing you that he's okay. Yes, that creates psychological distance. Oh, he's not really hurt, but it looked like he was hurt. So that creates that benign violation.
So there's also like a sense of contradiction in there. There's always a contradiction in a joke.
Oh yeah,
something that's contradicting, and it's kind of like that. You can find that contradiction in. What you were saying with like something that like denies the norm. Is that what you were saying with like the first part of the joke? So it's like it's contradicting the norm, you know, and that's what makes the joke. You know, that's
actually the theory of humor loosely defined by Kant. He never called it anything, but that's kind of how he defined humor.
And you know, Hegel is was very heavily influenced by Kant, right? And like Hegel's idea of human history and like how humans, you know, the spirit of human history, of how that like progression moves forward is like through the contradiction, through, you know, the dialectic of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, and like those two things contradict and make something new. And it's like in a joke, you have that contradiction. Like the joke is like, oh, well, the normal society says, we shouldn't be racist, kind of like the majority at this point. And then an alt-right meme could be contradicting that by saying the N-word or just saying a racist joke, right? And then it's like that's contradicting, and that's making something new. It's like making a new space for them to fall into ideologically, which pushes their ideology individually and culturally further down the pipeline of
Absolutely.
More political, more racist, more real. At first it's not that real, but the more they think about these jokes, the more they say these jokes, the more real it becomes.
Well, yeah, I mean, that theory, Tony.
Well, your theory is kind of like almost every theory has this idea, but one of the most famous examples is this idea of the integral theory. And it's that the integral theory, it's kind of the most famous because it was the most obvious, but this kind of happens in all philosophies or theories. But it's the integral theory is really just this guy made this new thing, but then people looked into it and found out that it was already a whole bunch of other theories that were already kind of made that he put together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, that kind of happens in all theories.
Oh, yeah. With humor theory, there's three classical theories of humor. Aristotle and Plato both kind of sort of came up with the superiority theory of humor. So it's an act of mocking someone. It's an act of saying that someone is beneath you. And then Freud came up with the relief theory of humor. It's a release of tension. Laughter is a release of tension. And then there's incongruity theory, which is what you described. The one that Kant didn't call it incongruity theory, but he kind of put that concept into the ethos, and then someone formally named it incongruity theory. There's validity to all of those, and there's also critiques of all of those. So the paper that I read, one of the papers that I read on benign violation theory was that, let's say you step on your pet's tail. So that's asserting superiority. You're much bigger and you have power over. That's could be a form of relief. Maybe your cat is just an asshole and he kind of deserved it. I'm going to get to that in a second. And it's incongruous. You don't hurt
animal abuse.
Yeah, all those would match all three of those, but of course that's not fun. Or if you find that funny, it's okay to kick you in the shins until they fall off. Those in the chat, analyze that joke for benign violation theory. So there has to be more to it, and that's where benign violation comes in. It has to violate it, but not go too far. Go ahead.
What Tony was talking about jokes pulling people down a pipeline. So one joke after another, and the more jokes you tell, the more you're pulling this person in a particular direction. We were talking about things like the alt-right pipeline, turning, bringing people into Nazi ideology. But this is also true basically of everything that and it is because of a fundamental function of the evolution of a brain, not necessarily just ours, but the way that brains evolve in general to deal with the world. It's not. We think of our brains as being very sort of mechanical, A leads to B to leads to C, and it's really not. It's really much more sloppy and vague, sort of chaotic mess that eventually comes up with a particular response to whatever it is we're exposed to. And in this chaotic mess, one of the things that evolution has found is that just sort of generalizing what you're seeing now from what you've seen before is a pretty good strategy. But that also leads us to a lot of really bad misconceptions. We're you think that that a house fire is far more likely or dangerous than a swimming pool. Statistically, it's the other way around. Statistically, far more people die in swimming pools than in house fires. And this is also the same reason why, I, as an individual, have this, unhealthy image of pizza delivery drivers because of my porn addiction. So, you know. Because the pizza delivery drivers are all ripped and, you know, they're not really like that.
I mean, we all have a type.
Can I want to refocus some of the conversation. So we're talking a lot about jokes, talking a lot about the joke pipelines that you can kind of get caught in, especially in, you know, the age of the internet with the kinds of communities and the ways that communities are set up these days and the algorithm that controls everything. With all of that in mind, one of the big conversations that we have on the left a lot is about types of humor that are maybe antithetical to leftism. And
okay.
Do you think that there's any kind of humor like that? Do you think that and how do you deal with humor that can be problematic in a world where everything is already built? You know, the systems are here that are already privileging some people and marginalizing other people.
Yeah.
Well, there's kind of like two very immediate examples kind of like in the that has been, you know, popular in the community, which was most recently that I've kind of been seeing people kind of talk about, which is like Vosh, and like how, you know, he has this certain style of comedy which is supposed to mobilize people, right? And then, you know, but like people are saying that, well, it's also like maybe he is bringing in positives, like he is bringing in people, but at the same time he could be alienating people. You know what I'm saying? Like which as in alienating people, as in, you know, making someone feel uncomfortable from a certain joke, right? So there is like that's an immediate contradiction. That's an immediate conflict, and and it is kind of like important. So it really is like, you know, okay, like, you know, like, is it like a weighing out of positives and negatives? Is it like, you know, is the good that he's doing with these jokes? And then it's like the jokes that I've kind of even seen, like, it's like him saying like not or it's like the I don't want to say like you know, the exact words he's saying, but like I think he says like the R word. And I, you know, because it's like he has kind of an edgelord kind of, yeah. He kind of has this like edgelord kind of ethos he's kind of built like in his fan base or whatever. So it really is like, you know, and this is a very polar. So I'm like really ready to like talk it through. I will never just throw my opinion on anything. You know what I'm saying? I'm really ready to like talk it through and hear other people's sides first. But it really is like this polar thing of like, okay, is this kind of style of comedy, does it have more of like a net gain? Like, is it more positive than it is negative? Or is it alienating more people on the left, making people on the left feel uncomfortable, which outweighs the positive? So what do you guys think about that? I just wanted to like kind of frame it, and like that's how I was thinking about it.
No, that's a really good framing. So and it gets into what I was going to talk about, but I'll save that. You have to think about who your audience is and who you want to draw in. So someone like, let's say someone like Vosh, or even to a certain extent, Destiny. I know both of them have their problems. It's all depends on who you're trying to reach. So we all have this kind of like window of what we deem morally acceptable. Some people's are very narrow, and some people's are very, very, very broad. And so when he uses humor where he's free to use certain slurs, where he says that is going to alienate a lot of people, and that is going to push a lot of people away because, you know, what is the point of using that word? What's the history of it? A lot of people are going to be tuned into what that word means and why it might be hurtful to a lot of people to use it. But if you were to play, not to play devil's advocate, but just I'm trying to understand where they would be coming from using
the perspectives.
Like the perspectives, yeah. So using words like that are going to get the people who are not on our side, who have this certain view of the ethos of the left as being very, very uptight about words, very, very language policing. Whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter. That's what their perspective of is. And so reaching to them, showing that this person is not controlling their speech in that way, will make them more open to his ethos, more open to his idea. and to bring them to the left, so I can see the perspectives from that. Personally, I don't like using. I think you can do more with your language, and I think you can make yourself appear like you're not overly policing yourself. If you're quick-witted enough, if you can dance with other people. I think it's a little bit harder. I think using slurs and stuff is kind of like the lazy way to go about it. But on the other hand, that's the instant signifier. So I can see the perspective there, although I don't necessarily agree.
Personally, I think they're both true. But also, like, I think, like, it's always going to be that way. Like, everybody has a different set of experiences, right? And so, like, you're never going to appeal to everyone. And so, like, yeah, some people are turned off by, the guy that uses certain words, when he makes his jokes. But, it's like Carlin said, like, there's no such thing as a bad word. It's the context that makes it, good or bad. The word is just a word. And, like, yeah, there are going to be some people that get pissed off just because you happen to use a particular word, regardless of what context it's in. I think I've actually said in one or two of my pieces in context.
That's
right?
a little TOS-y. You were talking about TOS earlier.
I'm sorry. I will.
But I'm just saying, if
stop.
you are,
But,
if you are going to be worried about TOS, that was TOS.
I'm sorry. Yes. But I've said it in a couple of my videos in context, right? Like, it's said in the movie Django, right? It's in context, right? It makes sense in a to use those things in a film that's supposed to be that's supposed to represent our history, because that is a part of our history. Yeah. And so there are always going to be people who get upset when you use it, regardless of the context in which you use it. I think Obama said it. I think, Don Lemon said it on, or at least he held up a sign with it in one of his news segments, or newsertainment segments. There are always going to be, the handful of people that get upset for you doing that. But then there are also going to be the handful of people on the other side who, if you, are careful to, avoid saying things like that, if you present yourself like, I'm forgetting the guy's name now, comedian that's sort of famous for, like, not really swearing.
There's a few of them.
Yeah, but
Christian comedians.
Well, yeah. But, there's always going to be people on the other side who, like, if you're like that, if you make a point of not swearing very much, that, are gonna be turned off by that too. So,
and I do have an urge to jump in real quick. Like, I'm sorry, but, like, just for I don't forget. And then it's really just for, like, if I'm involving myself with other people, you know what I'm saying? And language is, like, so important. Language is like communication and how we understand the world as a movement. So I just need to clarify this. Just like how earlier, whenever I was talking about, like, the slurs and some comedy or whatever, I made, even though I understand, words are just words, they don't hurt anyone. I still understand that I'm not going to say it. I'm gonna at least give a warning or something. You know what I'm saying? With, like, the R word, like I said. So. Oh yeah. So if I would give, like, a little piece of advice, and because I have to, if I'm going to be involved with this and this is public, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to have to say, like, I would really kind of influence the idea of, like, we should be, even though they're just words or whatever, it's context that, and I agree with all that, but we should still definitely, if you're on a public stream, I honestly, I kind of have to put up the argument you shouldn't say it at all. But I feel like you should at least, like the idea is, like, at least give a warning or say, like, hard R. Don't say the actual word. Yeah. And I'm sorry. No, because I'm just looking at the chat, and it's just, it really is, like, fuck it. It makes you, it really actualizes the fact that this is public, and it like, this right here, this is literally like councils, like leftist, get-togethers where people will literally this is real life political communications. Like it. So it's kind of an also thing of I talk about this in my BreadTube video. Taking the language we use and the kind of ethos, the jokes or whatever, taking ourselves more seriously as a community on BreadTube, because it is real. We are literally people. We are literally changing votes, changing polls, BreadTube. So it's take ourselves a little bit more seriously and be a little bit more responsible is kind of the idea. It's nothing, not a critique, literally just something that I had to say if I'm going to be involved in this. You got what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's there's a paradox. I think we need to take ourselves more seriously, but I also think we need to lighten up more. At the same time, right? There's certain things that people get uptight about that that I think having a bit more of a sense of humor about ourselves would really help. But then, there are, maybe other cases in which we're maybe not serious enough. It's all, like I said, it's all about, context.
So I have a little bit.
Patton Oswalt had a great bit about you can look it up on YouTube, or about listen to their heart, where he's talking about that evil people are really good at figuring out the lingo and saying all the right words, but then there are a lot of really great people, really good people who are trying to help, who are just not very eloquent.
That's a thing with working class vernacular,
rednecks or whatever.
Right. Working class vernacular is really I don't see, it's so and it's kind of not talked about that much, but there's this and also kind of to set the idea, and I really need people to tell me, but and it's also different communities or whatever. Online left is pretty big or whatever, and pretty broad, but the idea of working class vernacular, people say the S word a lot, and okay, there's so many S words. Just to quote, people say stupid, and that's just a quote, and I know that that's not as crazy as saying people find the R word way more that's okay, you shouldn't say that's direct, and then people say stupid really isn't as bad or whatever, but I still hesitate to literally say it, because I've heard of communities where people are still even these words we're not cool with. But then here's the thing, working class vernacular, people say those words all the time. You know what I'm saying? Maybe if you're a little more royal or whatever, a little more eloquent, and you're higher up, if you have more money, you're more educated, maybe people don't say those words as much. So it definitely more puts it as the left, it feels like we're liberalizing, neoliberalizing, instead of focusing I understand the R word, you know what I'm saying? And this isn't even an argument. This is just kind of the idea of how this could be viewed is instead of focusing on more certain direct issues or whatever, at the root cause or whatever, we're thinking about certain words that should be said. And I think certain words the R, and then the N word, the hard R N word and the R word, those are definitely ones okay, come on. Come on, you definitely shouldn't say those, you know what I'm saying? Or very set up, be responsible with those words. But it's also what from your guys' experience, where are we at community wise? What's the majority? Where's the line? Because I hear people say certain words. I'm literally hesitant to say when I say the S word. The STUPID. Dude, it's literally real. I'm not trying to alienate anybody. You know what I'm saying? If people do feel that way, I wish I had some kind of if I had a big Twitter or whatever, a big YouTube or whatever, I would love to do a poll, or people should do polls. You know what I'm saying? And see kind of where we at where are we as a community? And my two questions for you is, in your experience, when you're talking to people, where do you see that we're at?
It's really hard to say because it always depends on
maybe majority wise. Like if you could just give your generalized guess, what do you think?
Yeah, I have no idea what the public is thinking, to be honest.
And tankies. Another thing I want to talk about is tankies and these signifiers, these terms. Because I just seen that in the chat. And remember that. I want to talk about tankies after that.
Yeah, I'd say that there is no such thing as a general audience at all. It's always context specific. So if you're a subscriber to mine, you're probably very, very on the left. You're very, very pro trans rights. You're going to be more attuned to language like that. I mean,
trans rights. That's something that I honestly think you're not even on the left if you haven't accepted yet. You get what I'm saying?
You're right. Yeah,
that's something that is fundamental. And then there's and then it's also like, yes, respect people with disabilities. That's fundamental, right? It's deeper. So it's like, okay, some people are cool with saying the S word, some people aren't, because it's like, Yeah,
so here's my perspective on that. So I want to engage, have a community kind of like what you're saying, that we're very respectful of one another and that we can critique each other's language and stuff like that in a good way, not like you say it were canceled. But I'm also a part of a Discord community where I'm intentionally there because I want to talk to people who are not on my side. I want to talk to people on the right. I actually want to talk to straight up Nazis, straight up fascists, because that's like I actually do enjoy debate. I think it's more important, not more important, but I think it's important to talk. I think it's important to talk to people, because if you can just pull them a little bit this way, and it depends on the language you use with people, and it has a lot to do with reading the room. So if you read the room, like for example, when I was talking to Dankula, he said the N-word on stream. I think with a hard R, it's hard to tell with the Scottish accent. He said the N-word on stream. Yeah, he said the N-word on stream.
Dude, that Scottish accent is gnarly.
Like if I say bigger, he was like bigger.
Right.
Bigger, yeah. Like larger.
Yeah,
that's kind of how it sounded. And so I couldn't critique his language because I knew that would draw him away, that would push him away, that would push his audience away. So I couldn't critique his language unless I said something like, hey, don't give me a TOS file or something like that. So I had like put my critique into, hey, I had to put it on this rather than I actually don't like it that you said this.
Yeah, and I would straight up say like, hey, if you're going to come onto my platform, here's the rules straight up. That's how I kind of would have said it. Yeah,
there's a lot of critiques to be had about how I do debates because I know I'm not perfect. But just I want to see how smooth of a segue I can go back to what we. Let's say you are in a community and where no one says the N-word, someone says the N-word, and it's so shocking because people don't really talk about language all that much. It just isn't a thing people say. Let's say someone says the word and it gets a laugh because it was so shocking. People are like, huh? What?
Yeah, the nervous laugh. Yeah,
the nervous laugh.
That's how it was in the chat earlier when I was looking at the chat.
and let's say that no one says
oh my God, is somebody in trouble?
Yeah. And let's say no one says anything and the person says it again. Nervous laugh kind of dies down. Okay, he's just gonna say it. He keeps saying it. And then someone else says it. And then someone else says it and someone else. Suddenly that becomes the new norm where it's okay to say the N-word.
Yeah, because people have realized that no one is getting in trouble.
Right. And so now, though, saying the N-word isn't funny. It's not a violation anymore.
Yeah.
So in order to violate, you have to push it further. You can't just say the N-word. You have to, let's say, associate the N-word with something shocking. Because you weren't being racist. You were just saying a word. Oh, but now I want to take it a step further. I want to associate it with something. Oh, whoa, the same thing, nervous laugh. Like, whoa. Well, I mean, we were saying the N-word, so I wasn't racist when I said the N-word, so I won't be racist if I laugh at that. That's why it's funny. It's just a joke. But then that becomes the new norm.
Right.
And you have to go further to violate in order to still make jokes. You have to go further. That
like
norm is gonna shift. Yeah.
Like when PewDiePie hired the guys to hold up the sign that says "Kill all Jews," like he did that because like people got bored of the things that he was doing before, right? Like it was no longer shocking when he said, vaguely anti-Semitic things, so he had to ratchet it up.
Right. So that comedy is a good way to, because when someone says a joke, we all think that, oh, they're just a joke. They're not being, and that's, I think, a misnomer. You're always being serious when you make a joke. But let me explain that a little bit. you're choosing to make sounds come out of your mouth. You're shaping them in a certain way in order to convey a certain meaning, right? That's serious. You're doing that on purpose, intentionally. What people mean when they say that is literal. So you can't take jokes literally, but you do take them seriously. This person meant to say that. And that's why jokes work. So I think it's okay to take jokes seriously. It's okay to critique them, because go ahead.
Are you guys or like how well read or whatever Slavoj Žižek?
I'm not well read. Like
I've watched some of the
in
stuff,
general on any of the like leftist content.
Right. Just getting a feel so that I kind of like, like you have to get a feel so that, I kind of know like how I'm going about talking about it. But he if you're like aware of him at all, you might very you probably know that he talks about jokes a lot culturally. When he does cultural analysis, because that's how you can understand politics and where people were at ideologically as a culture. You can look at jokes, you know what I'm saying? Certain jokes that get replicated in society or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And that's like direct with, on the alt-right politically, they use jokes a lot to get their political communication across, to get their political anger or whatever their political emotions across. It's through political communication in the form of jokes. So Slavoj Žižek, when he's trying to understand ideology culturally, he analyzes jokes, and this whole, and like a big fundamental philosopher and in understanding ideology is Louis Althusser. He's a French Marxist structuralist, and he applies. And also I'm seeing the word signifier a lot more in leftist political discourse, which is great because a lot of people are probably using it, but they don't know that that's structural linguistics, which is what structuralists are. So like structuralism is like incredibly important, I think, and that's why there's so many structuralists on the left. It's almost like an inclusive. It's like all the structuralists. They're most of the time they're all left wing. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that's fundamental with understanding, just like, okay, basic for anybody in the chat who doesn't know structuralism, there's signifier, which is like what, is being like what the representation is. And then there's a signified, which is what the signifier is representing, like the actual thing or whatever. So the whole thing is like, if you eat the whole thing is rather than they say a joke and they say, oh, it's not literal. They're saying it as in like, okay, we're putting up these signifiers, these racist jokes or whatever, but the signified doesn't have realness to it. We're not actually, it's just a joke, exactly, bro. Yeah, it's not actually real, is what they're trying to say. So there is no signified. But the thing is whenever signifier is language, that's why Lacan, when Jacques Lacan, psychoanalyst, when he applies structuralism to psychoanalysis, his a big thing that he understands is through psychoanalysis is language. Like as a human being, we understand the world through language. Like that. That's the most essential part of our consciousness, is that you don't really have to get taught how to speak. If your brain's functioning normally, then you immediately already have. It's like this crazy evolutionary phenomenon, right? So it's like that's the way we understand the world is through language. So that's why structural linguistics is so important. And it's also, that's how I'm applying it to jokes, right? Which is like, the thing with ideology, Louis Althusser, and he's a structuralist, is how he understands it as in and he has this fundamental idea in ideology. So it's like, if you go and shake someone's hand, shake your friend's hand or whatever, there's no material benefit from shaking the hand. So it's ritualistic. It's like if a cult, they read a certain passage out of a book, that might not have any material benefit, but it's ritualistic. It's ideological, right? So whenever people say, racist jokes or whatever, and they're just jokes, right? They say these racist jokes, but the more they say it, the more real the signified becomes. So it's like these signifier jokes, they have real life effects to them. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, let's say at first I say racist jokes or whatever, and, you know, no one really takes them seriously. But then let's say I build a community of people, and then we all, now it's not just me, now it's hundreds of people saying these racist jokes. And the more we say them, the more real they become.
Yeah,
so
well,
at first people are like, oh, I'm not racist. And then at the end point, you know, people are going out killing people. You know what I'm saying? All for jokes.
That's what I was saying earlier about the well, I gave the example of the pool being more dangerous than the house fire. And that's what in neurology or psychology is referred to as the availability heuristic, where you perceive things as being likely based on how often you see them, but how often you see a thing is very, very dubious. And so, like, a lot of people, like, if they watch the news with any kind of regularity, then there's an idea in the news. There's a mantra, like, if it bleeds, it leads. And so, like, news will always prefer a story of, like, people being murdered over, like, any other story. And so as a result, even though the murder rate is really super low, we're hearing about murders all the time. And so we get this impression, if we watch the news, that, like, oh, you know, my God, I'm going to walk out the door and somebody's just going to gun me down in the street. And it's totally, like, it's a totally unhealthy view of the world. But we view the world that way because we're constantly inundated with these news stories. And it's, you know, everything that we do is that way. Like, the more of a thing is like practice, right? Practice makes perfect, or, well, better. The more you practice anything, the more, like, and so the more you absorb a thing, the more you think that thing is real. And it may not be. It may just be an illusion created by the news media.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I really liked what you were talking about earlier about language. So there's a really cool concept in this book called What Are You Laughing At by Dan O'Shannon. And it talks about the other side of language that we don't often talk about in, like, layman circles. It's the listener. So language requires a listener in order for it to be language, right? Otherwise, you're just making, you know, sounds out of your mouth. And,
right. And, like, language also, the whole thing in psychoanalysis is that they, like, make a distinction. Language and, like,
you cut out a little bit. I'm sorry.
Oh, am I? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so, like, there's this distinction, like, just in the word. So having usefulness, there's, like, speech, which is specifically just like me talking to you and then you hearing me and then you talking back, right? Language goes as deep as in, you know, whenever you think of a dog, an image of a dog in your mind, that image is a signifier, and then the actual dog that you're thinking of is a signified. So that's still language. So someone can still have language without speaking, and that was just just to make a distinction. It
kind of brings it back to those memes we were talking about earlier. The example we used was the NPC meme. That conveyed a train of logic. That conveyed language without us ever having to, like, see it in words, what that was trying to convey. And that requires us to understand the culture that we're in at the current moment. There's a really cool chart in that book that I was talking about that talks about how we hear humor. Humor is 100% reactive. So humor is not someone gives to you. Humor is something you take from the world. So that's why in intentional comedy, so if you're a stand-up comedian and you're trying to make people laugh, it's important to know your audience so much. But that also explains why we can take jokes from things that weren't intended to be funny. Like, I don't know, an example. Cats just going around doing things. They don't intend to be funny all the time.
I was going to say the movies that were made based on Atlas Shrugged were unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah. Ben Shapiro's book, Chef's Kiss. Working.
You know, I've literally thought about making, like, an ironic, like, a satirical, like, if I ever get, you know, successful enough or whatever. But, like, if I was to make a satirical movie based on True Alliance, I feel like that could be so funny.
I would love that. You'd have to find several bears of men.
Yeah.
Every man is a bear of a man. Anyway,
was that Ben Shapiro's book?
Oh, shout out Jose. There's a channel called Jose. He did
Jose, not Jay.
amazing.
I've seen some of his videos.
video of he reviewed True Alliance, and I barely knew anything about it beside when Chapo Trap House talked about it, and I really loved that video. Just a quick shout out. He did a good job on that. Really, like, and also he had to do the laboring of fucking reading that thing.
Yeah,
So,
It was good. All right. So
I just want to.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say. I was gonna. While you guys finish up what you're saying, if anyone has any questions that you want to ask in the chat to these people, I will grab a couple questions from chat. So you can go ahead and post some if you have any. But yeah, you all can go on with what you were saying. Sorry.
I wanted to.
Can I ask you? Go ahead.
I wanted to get to something specific, and I think this may be another point. Like we have some slight disagreement in that. Like I think the in your video where you were debating with Count Dankula, you keep saying to him that like I want people to think more deeply about the things that they say and do, and even their comedy. We need to take comedy seriously, and I think I sort of agree with that, but I also I don't know that it's really. Like, I think at a certain point, I think you're kind of like butting up against human nature, right? Like you're like, yeah, it would be nice, but like, you know, over like an entire society, is it really possible to get people to like be more heady about comedy? And I'm not sure that that's true because like, you know, like, you know, you see the guy, a comedian, and he's giving some speech, and he's talking about something important, right? And he means it, right? And he's giving you this long story about man's inhumanity to man, the hypocrisy inherent in government, and then he turns to you and he looks you deep in the eye, and like he's gonna make a real human connection with you. He's gonna tell you something really important, something that's gonna change your life. And he says to you, "These nuts."
What are the arguments? Go ahead and finish.
So, because ultimately, I think comedy when we know that it's, you know, when we know it's coming, it's sort of inherently self-deprecating. And I think you can find counter examples. You can find exceptions to the rule. Like Crowder doesn't really self-deprecate at all in his comedy. But by and large, comedy as a whole tends to be sort of inherently self-deprecating, and I think that this is a good thing. I mean, this is also where the it's just jokes, bro, comes from, and like we rail against the, you know, it's just jokes, bro, like, you know, like you don't just, you know, brush it off like that. But I think like just like leaning into the comedy is probably the better response to the like it's just jokes, bro, because like yeah, there's an inherent benefit to presenting serious messages in a way, in a mode that's not serious, because I
think you can switch kind of like your frame of mind. So, for example, how many did either of you watch comedy movies by yourself?
Are you going to bring up the thing that like you don't really laugh that much by yourself?
Yeah.
Like it's a sociological.
Yeah.
It's a sociological.
Yeah, laughter
laughing.
is a social thing, right?
It's kind of like a signifier to let someone know that hey, this is funny.
Together. Yeah.
There's so many things that go into your reception of a joke. I'm looking at this chart now: health, social context, feelings for the source, etc., cognitive process, incongruity, jokes, reality, receiver's reality, impact on content. I could read the entire chart. There's so many things that go into like your own personal like moat that you surround yourself with when you're going to hear a joke. And so it's really hard to understand that.
Alligators,
of course, alligators
in your moat.
In the joke moat. Gators in the joke moat. But that also, when you're going on, like, don't take comedy too seriously, like, you can also put yourself in different environments. So, for example, a lot of people here, I would guess, watch a lot of YouTube videos, and a lot of YouTube videos go over media analysis. That encourage you to look deeper into the media you consume, to think about it on a critical way, to think about plot structure and character. And so you're kind of taking some of the magic away from the stories that you learn. But one that gives you a chance, that one that gives you a chance to enjoy that media level. So it's not
on a deeper level,
and you can still switch that off, watch a new piece of movie in the mindset that you're just there to enjoy art. And so it's something that you can
right without doing that effort. Yeah.
Right. So for example, you were talking about there's a really good real life example of that thing you were talking about earlier with the person giving the serious stuff. It's called Tig Notaro's Live. It wasn't meant to be a special, but it ended up being like one of the best stand-up sets of all time. And if you just read out loud, it's not funny, but the ethos of what she did there was enormously active. Like she pulled norms so far down into like Scared and Hurtville that any little blip was hilarious. Like Tig Notaro's Live, she first thing she says on stage, to illness funny here, I have breast cancer. And that was the first thing she said on stage. And then the whole like nervous laughter, and then like the acceptance, like, oh, she really does. And like he was brought down, but she pushed through it and had this amazing set that managed to like have really huge laughs, like had people in tears. So studying that is super interesting to me. Like looking at how the emotional impact, why was that set so great? Why was that so effective in what it did? And then also looking at jokes that cause harm, like Dave Chappelle's newest special. Why did that joke, the I identify as an attack helicopter joke? Because that's what it was. That wasn't the literal joke, but that's what it was. Why do people make that joke? Why is that joke funny to certain people? And how can we explain, like, this joke is lazy and it does harm trans people? Like, how do we analyze that joke in a way that makes sense? And so I think there's usefulness to what I understand what you're saying. Like, we want to use comedy because it can broaden people's horizons. When you're in that frame of mind that I was talking about earlier,
right?
You're open to new ideas.
I think It's Just Jokes Bro has a couple of advantages actually, in terms of helping to like move people in a direction that we'd rather they be in. So, you know, if you just out there telling people like, you know, hey, don't do this, that's a lot less effective than illustrating the point of like why maybe we shouldn't do this with some kind of a joke, because like if you give them a joke, if you deliver it comedically, their initial response may be that they don't take any action, right? That they don't actually change their behavior. But because you didn't deliver it in this sort of like authoritative mind, because you delivered it in this sort of inherently self-deprecating way, you know, I'm a comedian, I just tell jokes. It sits in the back of their mind in a more it gets into the back of their mind in an area that they are not defensive against. And so the more that you can expose them to that in that way, in that where their guard isn't up, the easier it is to sort of pull them in another direction.
And a thing with the, you know, with language, you know what I'm saying, and how potent that is in political communication, and like the building of our political ideology, you know, as like, you know, the 21st century movement that, you know, online that we have right now, that we're participating in right now as we speak, you know, with people watching, with words like the N-word or whatever. It's because, you know, I'm 50% African American, Black, so it's not even, so it's like it with certain things, and it's like if you have, you know, identity or whatever, you know, it's like, you know, any kind of slur or whatever, people that have that in their identity, you know what I'm saying, it's like at an individual level, but it's like literally for me to stress my point, it's like it has nothing to do, because I don't care, you know what I'm saying, it doesn't bother me, but it has nothing when that little, my little, you know, tyrant, you know, like tirade I had on that or whatever, that has nothing to do with like my individual kind of it, you know what I'm saying, that's specifically like, okay, we have to work as a community to where like, how is that language going affect our movement culturally instead of individually. Like, I don't care. I don't have any care about it. As an individual, I'm worried how it's going to affect culturally. And I also thought that could play into like also kind of what I really wanted to talk about on here, which is the idea of like, we have all these terms, anarchism, Marxism, anarcho-syndicalism, Marxist-Leninism, and there's like all these there's probably literally hundreds of them, that we all kind of fit under on the left. But how useful are they? And I feel like that kind of goes into two layers, which is, do these terms have solid enough distinctions for the terms to be useful? Like do you have actual distinctions in your ideology that we can point to say, okay, here's why we use these terms? Structural linguistics, what you learn when reading that literature is that in language you understand a word or a piece of information and how it distinguishes itself from all the other pieces of information, all the other words.
Contrast from something else, yeah.
Exactly. How it's distinct from other words. So it's like, do these terms have solid enough distinctions for them to be useful and actually like use them in language? Is it more of like an aesthetic thing? Or in other words, sensationalism, as in, it's more for fun. It's like internet LARPing, it feels like we're doing something, but we're actually not. We're just throwing around these words. It's like, see who has the most specific ideology and who knows the most terms. So how useful, I feel like that's really a fucking spot for a debate, for a bloodbath debate, which is, because people have gotten fucking hella pissed whenever you critique ideology, identity plays a huge role in ideology. So when you critique someone's ideology, like, oh, you're kind of LARPing, you're critiquing their identity. So of course people get pissed. That's what the debate really should have been. Like, I feel like
it gets their defenses up.
Yeah, that will be something that will start a bloodbath.
I think the answer to all of your questions is so it all.
Well, it shouldn't be that. We need to work to change that. That's what I'm saying.
Like, this is my hot take. I think it always depends on what kind of audience you're trying to talk to. That seems like a cop-out answer, but it's enormously important. If you're on let's say you're on a space where you're trying to convince a lot of right-wingers, people on the right, to kind of be more open to your side, you want to kind of be a little bit edgy. You want to like throw the guillotine memes in there. You want to kind of like show that you can band with them. Versus if you're making a YouTube video and it's aimed at a more intellectual, like you're trying to talk to the upper crust, like people who really understand this stuff. So maybe it's not a YouTube video, maybe it's a TED Talk or a lecture or something like that. Then you would tailor your language to a certain, to talk to that audience. Now, let's say you're making a YouTube video that's explaining these concepts on a basic level. Maybe you don't throw 50 concepts. Maybe you just explore one. So it always depends on who is your audience. Who are you talking to? You wouldn't take the same, because it's the only thing I know anything about. You wouldn't take the same stand-up routine and tell it in a super, super conservative town in my state of Kentucky. You wouldn't take that same routine that worked there and tell it in a super left-leaning place like
in the Comedy Cellar in New York.
Yeah, you wouldn't tell them in the same place. So just like that, using those terms and using language like that, it always depends on or who you're trying to talk to. So being very aware of your audience.
Your demographic.
Yeah. Not even your demographic, your current audience. Right?
So that's like one layer to it, which is like, who your audience is, but as in like if we could have some kind of dialectic, for right now, like in the left, something more specific to the left, you know what I'm saying? So like, let's say your audience is the left. I put out a video and what, in my language and my audience is just the left. So I'm not talking about right wingers. I'm talking to the left, and that's rephrasing the question. If I'm kind of more, this video is targeted to the left, how useful are these terms? How useful is the, all these different for different political ideologies. And I see someone in the chat, and let me make something clear. And I already knew, like I said, if you critique someone's ideology, you're critiquing their identity. So there will be. So let me make something clear, which is that I'm not calling any specific. I'm not calling specifically anarcho-syndicalism. I'm not calling that just purely aesthetic. I'm not calling just one ideology aesthetic. I'm talking about, in some places, these terms get used so uselessly that it gives the feeling that it doesn't have much use. Or you can just see that it doesn't have much use and that it's more for the aesthetic or more for sensationalism.
Yeah, well, okay.
And I'm not saying, and for anyone in the chat, I'm not saying your specific fucking political ideology is just for aesthetic. I'm saying that it can get to a level of using all the different terms.
That goes back all through.
I want to get something to drink real quick.
Sure. That goes back through all human history, though. Like that's so you're just if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're describing is that like the certain people that like they want to sound smart and so they use big words, right? So it's people have been doing that probably since before Aristotle. It just is a thing that like people want their peers to think well of them, and so they will puff themselves up in whatever way they can to try and make that happen, whether that's using big words or showing off their car or whatever.
Right, which I always try to emphasize, like, it's not so much the signifier that's being used, which is the word. It's about what that word is signifying. You know what I'm saying? It's about the signified, which is the actual ideology, which is like most of the people that are hardcore about I'm a Leninist syndicalist. Any of the people that are hardcore on that, I feel like because you only have a limited amount of time to read this shit. You get what I'm saying? So I feel like they've spent too much time coming up with like the word or whatever that they want to be called, or looking into the word, that they haven't even read the actual theory enough to even know potent enough distinctions to have uses for them. So it's like really the most broad is, okay, there's a distinction between communism and anarchism, which is like, do we have a state or should we not have a state? That's a whole argument as well, right there.
That's a different stream.
All right. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I'm going to give everyone here the opportunity to plug themselves one last time, and then we're gonna wrap it up here.
Were there any questions?
There weren't really a whole lot of questions. We're also kind of going over, so
okay.
I wanted to be careful, but there was the only one that I was going to even consider asking was the question on, it's a bit of in my opinion, a little bit of a softball here, but the question of, is the comedian or the audience that is like where the problem lies here?
The joke starts at the comedian, so it's kind of the idea of like, do we attack the root cause or do we attack all the causalities from the root? Like if we try to remove a tree, are we going to cut it from the trunk, or are we going to chip away at the branches, all day? So it's kind of
there's a big conversation in there about the way the conversation is a back and forth between what you take and what you give and all of that good jazz. But yeah, we are running a little bit over, so we're gonna have to close it down here. So go ahead and plug yourself.
I think I just realized what they meant by problem being the connection between comedy and morality. Like, but then you're getting into the death of the author, right? It's a whole other thing. I can't get into it. There's no
it's a whole thing.
So my YouTube is BigBreadBrainz. I'm about to post all my links, my Twitter, and all that shit in the chat, so you guys can find it there.
Yeah, I'm sitting here. My YouTube channel is Jangles ScienceLad. Same thing. I just posted it in the chat. If you'd like to go see it, you can follow me on Twitter at SJWDebates. I actually have 2 videos on comedy theory. One's called Humor and Morality, and the other one is on comedy and rhetoric called Humor. It's called Comedy Must Be Politically Correct. It's a kind of a facetious title, but I actually make a lot of points that I've talked about here.
And if you want more dick jokes for justice, check out Woohooligan Comedy, also on YouTube.
All right, cool. Thank you so much for all three of you joining us. This has been a wonderful, wonderful time and a great discussion and an amazing bloodbath.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good one.
Yes.